Hey, everybody. Welcome back. It is another episode of the Gaslit Truth Podcast. You are here with your two favorite hosts. I'm usually Therapist Jenn, but today I decided to write Podcaster Jenn, and that just threw Dr. T for a loop. Are you okay over there?
I'm not. I don't know what's going to happen here. Only because we have a guest with the same name, so this is going to get wild. So,
Well, it's okay. I mean, I think that we are two smart chicks, so we'll figure out which Jen you're trying to talk to. I think we can do it. But we are here with myself and my co-host, Dr. Teralyn, and you have hit the Gaslit Truth Podcast. So don't move. Stay here. No going to anything else because we have got a fabulous show for you today with an awesome guest. And before we introduce that guest, I want to remind everybody of all the things, right? This is a deliverable, the things. Everyone says, you guys always say the things. Yeah, we do, because you should know the things by now. So hook us up, DM us on any of our socials. You can find the Gaslit Truth Podcast anywhere that you listen to podcasts. You know that we're on YouTube and on Facebook and on Instagram. Or if you'd like, you can go ahead and send us a traditional email at the gaslitruthpodcast@gmail.com. We want to hear your Gaslit Truth stories.
we
So
do
without that
all of
further
them.
ado, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. T.
All right. So, we have a special guest today. And one of the reasons why this guest is special is because she is I'm going to say related to another guest that we have or had on here that we really, really enjoy. And she hooked us up with him. So we'll get to that in a minute. So we have another therapist, Jen, on the show, which is why this is hard. We've got two therapist Jen. So we have podcaster Jen now, and now we have therapist
See,
Jen, but I'm
that's
going to
why I
call her.
didn't write Therapist Jen,
Yeah,
because it's just
right.
too much for you. It's
It's
too
too
much for you,
much.
Terry.
It's way too much. So I'm going to call her Jennifer
Or I
just
can
for the
be
sake.
Jenny Marie
Jenny.
LCSW.
There you
Okay. All right.
go.
We'll call her Jenny.
Or
All
my
right.
social media is codependencer.
Yes, it is.
But I
Oh,
might
Yes,
change
it
that.
is.
don't change it. Not for today.
Okay.
Don't change it. All right. So today we have Jennifer Leupp, and Jennifer is an LCSW. She's a holistic psychotherapist licensed in California, Florida, and Vermont, specializing in codependency, trauma, and substance misuse. In her practice, she often works with adult children of alcoholics and adult children of narcissists. Jennifer is a certified EMDR therapist and mainly uses EMDR, IFS, and mindfulness in her work with clients, in addition to talk therapy. Jennifer is also the author of Sobriety Workbook for Women, is a certified yoga instructor, and a musician. You wrote that in there yourself.
Yes, she is.
When she's not with clients, she enjoys practicing yoga, traveling, and making music and art. Please welcome Jennifer Leupp to the show.
Thank
Yay.
you.
Yes.
Excited to be
Welcome.
here.
Yeah. Well, so you've got a lot of traditional credentials under your name or next to your name or beside your
Yeah.
name. But the stuff we want to talk about is the non-traditional stuff,
Yeah.
right? Because there's a whole nother side to you that is very interesting. And I think I'm trying to remember back how you and I got hooked up. It may have been in a therapist group on Facebook, possibly.
Yeah, I think I was looking for other people that were in the more holistic realm of things, because I just feel like I've
A
had a
lone
bad
wolf.
experience with like a lot of therapists and
Yes.
trying to look at like underlying causes or even like talking about nutrition and stuff like that. I've just gotten a lot of you know, kind of bad comments from them in Facebook groups on social media. I don't want to say bad, but like kind of chastising me for even
Yeah.
talking about that stuff. And I just felt like I wanted to meet more people that were, had kind of similar approaches or beliefs as I do. So,
Yeah, and so I think that's where I found you on one of those groups, which are
yeah.
horrible, by the way. Most of those groups are not good groups
Yeah.
anyhow. So we need to have our own group for holistic therapists and social workers and do that. But
Yeah.
I agree. There's a tremendous amount of, I'll just call it pushback from traditional therapists.
Yeah.
But it's so weird because I view what we do in the holistic, natural realm that should be traditional. The other stuff is non-traditional because the other stuff actually moved away from tradition.
Hmm.
I think we're just kind of bringing it back around and shining a light there. But I would love to know your thoughts, particularly on anxiety and depression. And where do you lean holistically? Like, when we use the word holistic, what does that mean to you?
It means just looking at the whole body and mind and spirit and how different things impact us. Looking at diet and exercise and sleep and possibly toxins and infections that may be contributing to mental illness, and also trauma, of course, as I'm an EMDR therapist.
Hmm.
So.
When you when you say nutrition, is there a
Mhm.
particular line in nutrition that you're like, this is what I really, really enjoy working on with nutrition and mental health, or even
Mhm.
with infections and things like that? Like, what is your passion in those spaces? Like, what is it that you really believe?
Well, should I just start out with kind of my story around
Sure,
nutrition stuff, or
please.
Yeah,
okay.
that'd be
Yeah,
great.
go
Okay,
for it.
okay.
Yeah.
So, I became vegetarian in high school because I had a Buddhist girlfriend, actually a girlfriend, not a friend, if you know what I mean. And then I was eating very healthy, probably more for dietary reasons, like dieting. But then in my senior year, I started to eat like more processed foods, and I did end up getting depressed then. And then when I went to undergrad in Santa Cruz, I was exposed to veganism and got into that kind of more through animal rights stuff. And I also had got into yoga and pranayama. I did this course for a week where you're not supposed to have any alcohol or drugs and not have any garlic or onion. And you do pranayama, which is breath retention. Right.
I can
And
see why
I,
you wouldn't
I
want
felt
garlic or onion there.
what?
I said I can see why you wouldn't want garlic or onion with working on the
Yeah,
breath. That's a weird combination though. I don't mean to like skip into your story here,
no
but
worries.
alcohol, drugs, garlic, and onion. That's a
Yeah,
weird
yeah.
combo.
I think it was also vegetarian. I think it was also like no meat or possibly vegan. I can't remember exactly, but it was called The Art of Living. Because they had a sign that was kind of drawing people in around mental health and stress and stuff. And that's why I ended up going to that. And so that I felt I had been using a lot of alcohol and drugs while I was in undergrad, And so when I did that week of sobriety and the no garlic and onion, those are both depressants. And a lot of yogis
Mhm.
like don't want to use them because they um, can interfere with meditation. And so that week I just felt high. Like I remember going to a party and I was so used to being, can I cuss here?
Oh yeah,
Okay,
please.
Hell
so I
no.
was so used to being fucked up, that I that when I went to the party and I was sober, I felt high, and that was kind of my first experience with like a stretch of sobriety at that time. Um, and then I think more towards like my senior year of undergrad, I decided to do a full quarter sober, and I took yoga at that time. I took a yoga course that was really amazing and was helpful in getting me through being sober and getting me through a couple courses that were difficult, like electronic music and my senior seminar in politics. So, yeah.
Okay, okay, that just yeah.
Yeah, it was like a literature class, politics through American
Oh
literature.
man.
So,
Yeah, that'll do it.
yeah.
Yep.
But it was a fun one. I think my professor was actually an alcoholic because he could only wake up at like 8 in the morning, like have class at 8 in the morning, and I think he probably drank after that. So,
Mm.
anyways, so where was I? The nutrition stuff. Um, so then I ended up after undergrad moving in with somebody, and I remember she had a book called Healing with Whole Foods. And I think that influenced me. And I also lived in LA. I lived near Erewhon, which is a health market, a very like bougie health market where a lot of the celebrities go there and stuff. And so I was exposed to like raw foods there. I saw one of the major like raw vegan people speak there, David Wolf. And I also saw Donna Gates speak there about the body ecology diet. And I tried the raw food diet, which was like a higher fat raw food diet, and it didn't really feel good for me. I tried it maybe for a month. And then I was still like using a lot of alcohol and drugs, and ended up trying the body ecology diet, which is like a typical candida diet for for people dealing with things like chronic yeast infections or
Mhm.
rashes, like I've dealt with systemic overgrowth of yeast. And so I did that, which is like a low fruit approach. And around the same time, I was living in Koreatown in an apartment that I had like gone through major depression around there. Like I had very severe depression. Like I wanted to die. I was like crying every day, Ooh, it's kind of hard to talk about that.
Yeah. Give
Wow.
yourself a minute if you need to,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I ended up doing that body ecology diet, and it's kind of hard to remember exactly what went on. I know it was like around 2007, and I was able to heal all these candida symptoms in like 2 months on that diet. I was eating like eggs and fish on that diet because she recommended that. There's a lot of probiotics, and it's like lower fruit. And then I I feel like what ended up happening, I made the depression may have been related to the low fruit, I feel like. Um, but it was also like a number of other things. And the place was roach infested. And I've seen now that like roaches could signify that there's mold there. So I'm guessing there's a possibility that I may have been exposed to mold there, and a number of the other places I lived in, because I lived with a bunch of like, punk kids in like different houses all the time, and I
Yeah.
just moved so much, and I'm sure I was probably exposed to some mold at some point. And also had been using a lot of alcohol and drugs. And so I'm sure my immune system was lowered. And so then from there, I ended up doing more yoga. I went to the YMCA like at least 5 times a week and did yoga. And that's how I feel like I really came out of that depression. And also because the body ecology diet got me into like more whole foods approach, where I was like reading labels and looking at the ingredients that were in them. And the body ecology diet is actually used for autism as well. And I know there's a couple different approaches I've seen work for autism that somebody I know named Karen Ramsey has a book on autism and using like the raw vegan diet for autism, like a low fat, high fruit raw vegan diet. And she's had success with that with kids with autism. So
I'm just
yeah.
gonna ask a question here, and you may or may not know the answer to this. Do you
Hmm.
know the reason why? Like, what is it within those diets that um assists in some mental health disorders, like like autism, or do you know what it is in there or not in there, or is it just because it's whole foods and not inflammatory
Oh,
and
in the diet, well,
yeah,
gluten, it's
gluten.
gluten free. They're
Mhm.
raw foods and body ecology diet are both gluten free diets.
Okay.
So is
Yeah.
keto, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're also eliminating processed foods. They're eliminating colorants, which has
Mhm.
been found to be linked to like autism and ADHD. And that's
Okay.
another one of those things that therapists have gotten upset with me over, for talking about like artificial coloring. Um, and the possibility of that. They say it hasn't really been proven yet or something.
Yeah.
So
Well,
Uh-huh.
all of the things, gluten, like I get pushback about gluten, I get pushback about processed foods,
yeah,
like you're villainizing food groups, whatever, and I'm like, I don't think dyes and gluten are groups of food, but
Yeah.
whatever.
yeah,
So but I think that's an interesting part of the conversation, is that I think we want it so badly to be neurochemical or
Mhm.
neurology based, that we
yeah,
don't look outside for any other influences that could possibly be there.
yeah,
And as therapists, I feel like that is such a closed mindset, that that our mental health could possibly be impacted or related to anything else,
yeah,
besides a broken brain. We've done episodes on broken brain before too.
Yeah.
So,
Another commonality between those two diets is that they're both dairy free, at least initially for the body ecology diet, casein free. And so, yeah, there's a lot of studies that show that that can cause a lot of inflammation. Dairy can. Body ecology diet includes a lot of like cultured vegetables, like sauerkraut, kimchi, stuff like
Mhm.
that. But the
Yeah.
raw vegan approach that I mentioned doesn't really. But I think they both can be very helpful for digestion, and they both will talk about food combining as being something that's important, which I've found incredibly important, right? Like eating
Mhm.
fruit by itself or a melon by itself, or not combining like proteins and grains as much,
oh, that's
and just
interesting.
focusing on
Yeah.
digestion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard of food pairing before for complete protein. Like
Hmm.
when you're vegan or vegetarian to pair certain foods together so that you have a complete protein. But I've
Yeah.
not heard of it in terms of like don't eat this food with that food. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I cuz
Hmm.
I and then I think this too. I'm like, if food is related, why not just give it a try? Like food it's difficult. Like changing your diet is
Well,
difficult.
that's it right there. Like
Yeah.
that's such a big thing. I had a acquaintance of mine say that to me the other day, and they're sitting in front of the options of changing diet or taking a psychiatric medication that was prescribed to them, and I'm giving them
Mhm.
all the information. Right? I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, informed consent. You're not asking me for all that, but I'm going to give it to you. And they sent me a message and they said, okay, Jen, but what you need to understand is your ideas aren't easy, and I would rather do something easy. And I said, "Okay,
Totally.
there
Yeah.
it is."
Yeah.
Like there it is. There is, yeah, and
But
that's so
that's on the consumer level, and I think about it with a
yeah,
therapist, like, why if you know that it could potentially help your client, why
yeah,
wouldn't you at least suggest a few things? Like, I
right,
don't get that. Like, I
yeah.
don't understand. I really
But do
do
they
not
know?
understand.
Do they know?
I
I mean, we know how we were trained. I mean,
Yeah,
how many nutrition courses were included in all of the degrees that you have, Terry?
none. Everything I
Right.
did, I had to do
Like,
after, yeah.
so
Same thing with Jennifer here, like,
yeah.
but your story is very interesting because you were dabbling in this stuff way earlier than your education
Yes.
too,
Yeah.
and, so you were
Yes.
able to bring some of that forward, I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Jenny, you were saying then, so you paired this diet change with yoga,
Hmm.
and you had said that for you that was like a pivotal point for healing your depression.
Yeah, like I don't think I really fully maintained the diet change, but like I was aware of like whole foods and ingredients and stuff at
Yeah.
that point, but yeah, it felt like the yoga was really what pulled me out at that point. But then later I ended up getting sober in like around 2012 or so, and then I got more into the raw foods thing. Was introduced to raw food romance by a friend that she does more of a high fruit, low fat approach, which I was introduced to like in the early 2000s. It's the 80-10-10 diet by
Mhm.
Dr. Douglas Graham. He's a
Yeah.
chiropractor. Um, or is he a chiropractor? I can't remember. But
I don't know.
I hadn't been introduced to it earlier, but it tasted so bland to me because it's a salt, oil, and sugar-free diet. And we're not really used to that at all.
No.
So it's basically eating fruits and vegetables with a small amount of nuts and seeds,
Mm.
diet. And I tried that at that time and I was like, no, this isn't going to work. But then I was introduced to the raw food romance, and she's an influencer that makes her dishes really flavorful, and it's still like low in salt, but she uses a lot of spices. And so I tried her approach and ended up being able to heal like acne and lose weight and just feel good. Like I feel really good when I eat, like my mood feels really good when I eat a higher fruit diet. And I also had the experience with my menstrual period, like being a lot easier to deal with after I started incorporating way more fruits and vegetables. I remember a time when I was in my internship, probably in 2014, when I was like literally under under the desk because I couldn't get up, like because my period was so difficult. Like I could not get up. and and then yeah, the fruits and vegetables were really, really helpful and I don't experience like much difficulty at all anymore in that arena. Yeah. So
When you got into your master's program and became an LCSW, um, you were basically, I'm going to guess you were educated the same way we were, in traditional therapies and things like that, very traditional stuff. Was it difficult for you to not see the nutritional piece missing in that education, or were you okay
yeah.
with like this isn't part of this anyway, and then later learning to integrate it? Like how was that for you? Because you had some
Yeah.
serious, experience with this previously, you know?
Yeah, it was difficult. And I remember even just like eating fruit in my grad program and at my internship and people just like looking at me like I'm a freak or something, you know?
A fruit freak? You were a fruit freak?
Yeah, like there was this girl, one of the people that was supervising me at an internship was eating like Cheetos and like she's looking at me like I'm a freak for having a papaya or something. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, what?
No, actually, you're the one that needs
Yeah.
more fruit. Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I ended up doing my capstone on mental health and nutrition. If you don't know what a capstone is, it's similar to a thesis, but you don't publish it. And so I just sent you guys that.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just kind of found a lot of research around how fruits and vegetables can, improve mental health, reduce depression and anxiety, fresh fruits and vegetables, and how processed foods and like fast foods can increase mental health issues like depression and anxiety and other ones. And also about like there's some research about autism and ADHD, kind of what I already mentioned about food coloring and artificial flavoring and gluten,
Mhm.
casein. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So in your practice, because I know you do a lot of different things, which is really super cool. Um, and so Jenny and I have had some conversations on the phone about the difficulties in integrating nutrition and holistic factors into a therapy practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I would like to talk about that because I think podcaster Jen over here would have some interesting
I know.
thoughts on that as well.
I know.
Like,
I'm looking at this article you sent us,
yeah,
Jenny,
Yeah.
about the top 10 raw foods to improve mental health. I'm like,
Yeah.
I just pulled the link up here. I hadn't seen that. So I'm listening. I'm just
yeah,
multitasking
yeah.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think while we're on here, we've got a lot of consumers that listen to us, and I think we have a lot of other therapist friends that listen to us as well.
Yeah.
And so the integration of this is crucial. And I think most therapists will say things like that's outside of the scope of practice. They'll say things
Right.
like that, or
Ah,
Yeah.
it's unethical to discuss these things. And I said to podcaster Jen a while ago, I said, at this point in my career, I think it's more unethical for me to not say these things,
yes.
to not share the things that I know to be
Totally.
actually true,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and withholding. And I'm like, as therapists, our job is lifestyle. It is all of that. It is holistic factors. That's
Mhm.
exactly what it is. It's just not written as holistic,
Yeah.
It. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go
You
ahead,
say this all
podcaster
the
Jen.
time too. Like she's always yelling at me when I'm like, I just don't think I'm an expert enough in this to talk about it. And Terry's always like, no, like you need to check yourself on this right now. You actually are. You have
Yeah.
more information than most people do, and
Mhm.
and you're right. It's this idea of. I know I go back to informed consent so much when I talk about it, but it's almost like I can't share now what I know because what I know is not only research based, but and if I throw that out, right, I'm watching it happen in my own life. I'm watching it happen in the lives of people that I know when we make these changes, and even something as simple as nutrition and what that does for the mental health game.
Mhm.
And it's like you can't not say that anymore to people, or at least give that as a option on the table now, regardless if it wasn't part of your traditional training. We that is part of our job as therapists and social workers. Lifestyle is this stuff, but it kind of wasn't taught to us in that way. But we are experts in it. We can be experts in it, and we have the knowledge of it. And to share that, I think, with people is important, because you're doing a disservice. Actually, it's almost unethical to not share this knowledge that you
Totally.
have
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
have it. That part intrigues me. And that's the part I think that Terry has at least pushed a lot on me, when I'm just like, I don't know enough. I got to know more. I need to read more books. I need to do more research.
You
But
get more
I've already got it.
certifications and,
Yeah, I need more
become a dietitian.
certifications.
Yes.
Yes, like now I got to get these credentials after the name. And it's like, but actually you don't, because you've got a lot of that knowledge and you know how it works. And
Mhm.
that's part of our job, is to share
There's
that.
this really beautiful thing in a therapist's life. It's called psychoeducation. Like, and that beautiful thing of psychoeducation is built into our practice all the time. And
Yeah.
so I look at these things as being psychoeducation. I look at these and I'm like, sharing information that's real and researched is part of psychoeducation. Now, therapists can't create like specific meal plans for people. They can't say,
Yeah.
this, and this for this disease state or whatever. But therapists can certainly say, are you drinking enough water?
Yeah.
you know, or figuring out what enough is. Do you eat protein at all? Do you eat fruits and vegetables
Yeah.
ever? We ask things like, do you smoke? Do you drink alcohol, and how much?
Mhm.
Most of us don't even ask if you're drinking caffeine. I do. So there's all
Yeah.
these missing pieces of what it is we're doing. And I think social media has this way of saying all food is equal food. Like if you're on TikTok or anything like that, it's all weight loss culture. All food is equal food. If you're in a
Yeah.
calorie deficit, that's all that matters. And I'm like, but that is so untrue, as evidenced by your your path, Jenny. Like you're saying, when I eat more fruit, and especially more fruit, you keep emphasizing fruit, I feel better.
Mhm.
But I
Mhm.
think understanding, especially with our clients, like a lot of people coming in feeling terrible, and they don't believe that food can help them feel better, but they don't
Right.
know what better feels like anyway. Like that is a self-awareness that is actually very integral with a therapist. Like, getting your client to understand what their body feels like, what makes them feel better, what makes them feel worse. But when you're in a state of chronic, I feel
Yeah.
shitty all the time. Like, you just expect to feel shitty all the time. Like
Yeah.
you don't know that there's level of shitty, right? Am I an 8 or a 10 or a 7 in the shitty factor scale,
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's such a conundrum, but is it? Do we make this out to be a bigger conundrum than what it needs to be? As far as sharing this information with our clients, that
Yeah.
is my question to both of you today.
Yeah.
Do we make this out to be a
Mm.
bigger conundrum than it needs to be? Who's going first?
I
Well,
talk all the time. This is
I
not
kind of want
my,
to
this
talk
is
about
your
my
space.
experiences in jobs, like out of school. Would that be
Yeah.
okay? Okay.
Yeah. You can
Um,
talk about whatever the hell you
so
want to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
so my first job was at a rehab out of school,
Oh,
and
man. I feel so
um,
sorry for you.
yeah. So
Anyway.
I also have experience in working with the forensic population, as it's called.
Oh,
Yeah, because I taught a little subbed at juvenile hall, substitute taught, and taught yoga in women's jail. But then I ended up working at this rehab where there was people coming from prison, or given the option of going to prison or rehab for a year, up in the mountains. And
That is fantastic. Let's hear it.
yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, so they were all on massive amounts of medication, like for the most part there. And the diet was terrible there. And a lot of them were given the option to go to Walmart and go shopping, and then they would fill their carts with all of this like processed food. and or processed food, right?
Just air quoting
And
food.
so
Just
that
go to
was
YouTube to see that. Yep.
yeah. And
Mhm.
then they did allow me to show the Forks Over Knives documentary, which is a documentary about a whole foods like plant-based diet.
Yep.
So that was great. They were also using a lot of air fresheners when I first arrived there. And I am chemically sensitive. And so they had to stop using the air fresheners there because of me. And the woman next to me, I had to have her stop using perfume, unfortunately. Perfume is toxic. And there is actually research showing that these chemicals, these synthetic fragrances, and a lot of the cleaning products that are used can trigger mental health issues like
Yep.
anxiety and anger. Yeah. And so after that, I went to work with kids for a while, and I became more chemically sensitive and was exposed to somebody that had a lot of air freshener scent around her, like in my training. And it just kind of sent my brain off, off on a thing. And I felt like I had like couldn't think, and it was just weird. And so they ended up letting me go based on a like they couldn't accommodate my chemical sensitivity there. I wasn't allowed to like wear a mask with clients that were wearing fragrance, or like not allowed to do a Zoom meeting, which is ironic because this was like right before COVID. So
Yeah.
wasn't allowed to do a Zoom meeting, instead of sit in this small room with other therapists that had just put on hand sanitizer that has fragrance in it, and stuff like that. So then, and I also at that agency was not allowed to use the trauma technique that I had been trained in with the kids. I was not, because it wasn't like the evidence-based one. And then I wasn't allowed to talk about nutrition, and I wasn't allowed to do yoga. So,
What were you
and
allowed
so
to
we're
do?
working with
That's what I want
these
to
kids.
know.
We're working with these kids that have ADHD, and it's like, we can't do anything.
She was allowed to do CBT. That's
Yeah,
it.
that's it.
And I hadn't had the training yet for the trauma focused CBT. So
Right. That's it. Right. Exactly.
basically we're
You
allowed
were
to
allowed to just
recommend,
do the little traditional. It's in the
yeah.
book. Gold standard bullshit.
Yeah, we're allowed to refer them to a psychiatrist. So
Oh, and you can go.
Oh,
See,
yeah.
there you go.
Yeah.
I gotta sit
Man,
here for just a second. That
this
was
just makes
it.
me
Like,
so upset. Like
I'm
just
taking
to
this
hear
all
this,
in. I'm like,
right? Just to
what?
hear this, like,
And that's so
yeah,
funny too, because it like the chemicals, they also can trigger people that have ADHD. They can trigger
Of
kids, right?
course.
So I'm
yes,
Yes.
sure like some of
yes,
those kids were reacting to it as well.
yeah.
There's a lot of
Which is
kids. Well,
Yeah.
there's a lot of kids with ADHD type symptoms, right? Who are also have not just sensitivities, but actual allergies that are left
yes.
uncovered, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
so, without taking that deeper dive into what's actually going on for this kid, particularly, we don't really know what's happening. And so, I view that as like a therapist that has to go in and do CBT. Although, a kid is reacting sensitively to a chemical,
Mhm.
like how is CBT going to help change your chemical sensitivity
Yeah.
or change your allergy, or change your nutritional deficiency? Like how, but the thing is so many therapists don't know that that's can be a thing.
Yeah,
It's such a siloed proposition,
yeah. It
Yeah.
is. Yeah,
like
yeah.
you're not, and this is the way healthcare is today,
Mhm,
right? Like, you're not a dietitian, don't talk about nutrition. You're not a
mhm.
psychiatrist, don't talk about medication. You're not, a heart doctor, don't talk about the heart. You're not, you're just a therapist,
Yeah.
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
Mm.
So then I ended up meeting my partner like a couple years ago, and I was really excited that he knew about all this stuff.
You're
Like he
talking
knew
about
about
Dr.
chemical.
Josh, right?
Yeah.
Like,
What
Like
the
he knew about chemical sensitivity. Like our first date, we're talking about chemical sensitivity. We're talking about my
you
rash
imagine that on a
that I've had
date? Like, I'd be
forever.
like, I'm in love with you. I'm so geeking out over
Yeah.
everything you know. I feel so validated, right?
Yeah.
Do you say you were talking about your rash, Jenny?
Yeah. We
Yeah,
were talking about my rash on the
Love
first
it.
date.
that's great.
So
Oh, Josh.
so he is constantly talking about toxins and infections, right? Like I hear
Mhm.
this like all day long. I feel like underlying toxins and infections. And so those are things
Yeah.
that most therapists are not aware of, right? Toxins like
Yeah.
heavy metals or toxins like in the products, synthetic products or like the toiletries that we use or
Yeah.
the air and water and everything like that.
Yep.
And then infections, some things that he introduced me to were Bartonellas, which is cat
Yeah.
scratch disease,
Yep.
which could possibly, be linked to schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and other issues, other mental health issues as well. And then I just sent you like an article that he sent me this morning about another infection coming from a cat that can be linked to anxiety.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
Wow.
yeah.
Not
Yeah.
to be confused with cat scratch fever.
Yeah.
Truth.
Just saying. Mhm.
Bartonella is like so what I don't know a whole lot about that, but I know what it looks like. And it looks like a bunch of stretch marks like
Yes.
across your back, you know?
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah,
Yep.
so when you see photos of it, so that's why I think it happens a lot in teenagers and I think especially in boys, like a growing boy, right? So my son, when he was in high school, went from, a spindly little thing to like a bulky guy. So he did get some stretch marks. So I think some parents look at that and they think, oh, this is just normal. But when
Mhm.
you see it across the back in the amount, that is
Mhm.
not typical of like
Yeah.
growth, you know. So that's interesting. And I don't
Mhm.
know if you know anything about pans or pandas or anything like that too. I'm sure you might be a little familiar,
Oh,
but
no, I haven't.
no, okay, so we won't get into that. But this is
Okay.
one of those, infections, and disease states
Yeah.
that people need to really be looking at as
Yeah.
an underlying cause of mental illness because,
Yeah.
you know, I I believe mental health comes from somewhere. It doesn't just like come out of nowhere,
Yeah.
so it comes from some things from somewhere and we just need to get curious about that. And as we were talking before, like you can't talk your way out of a disease state. You know,
Yeah.
Right.
you can't therapy your way out of this shit
Right.
sometimes,
Right.
like you just can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Um,
mean, go ahead.
so
Otherwise,
I
I'll just
met
take over. I'll just
I
take over.
met
This is
with a
my show today.
therapist.
I know. I'm
It's
just
my
letting
show.
you talk
It's
today
my
because you're
show
just on a
today.
roll. So
Okay.
That's because I
I
just came back from the IMMH, so I'm all jacked up.
she's
So
all
anyway.
jacked up.
Mhm.
So I met with this therapist recently that is also named Jenny Marie, and she lives.
What is I think I
I
need to join
know.
the Jenny Club. I don't know. Mhm.
It's a good
And
name.
she's a therapist with a group practice in LA that's known for helping people get off of medication. And she
Mm,
refers a lot of her clients to this naturopath in Ojai, California, that helps people to reverse like schizophrenia and bipolar, and also helped one of her clients reverse OCD as well
mhm.
with her treatments. So yeah,
Did y'all hear that? You can
yeah.
reverse some of this stuff that most people believe that they are um, attached to for the
Yes.
rest of their life.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, like I'm not I use the whole when people will give me the buzz term of, well, genetically this is how
Mm,
it's going to be. Like I have a first degree relative who had major depression. Good for you.
right.
You have been gaslit.
Yeah.
And I can't say, it's like I can't say it that way, right? As the therapist, right? So you start the psychoeducation and you start talking about like, like root
Inside,
cause
you're
and
dying. You're like, I just want to
I
say
know,
what
and I
I.
just want to go, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
have you looked up any of my shit before you decided to hire me as your
Right.
therapist? Because this is going to come out of my
Exactly.
mouth, right? Like, because you're not sold on that. It's actually not the bill of death that you think you need to have, even if there are genetic ties.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Well,
have to be that way. You
genes
know,
don't automatically mean you're going to get something.
well,
Even if you
correct.
have a genetic snip that's like, oh, you've got a bad snip, that doesn't mean you're gonna
Exactly.
get it. I mean,
It,
I have an allele for COMT, which is usually for anxiety and anxious people. I,
yep.
I don't think I'm anxious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm not your typical anxiety person. Now, could that be from other factors in my life? Of course it can,
Sure.
you know? So, but
Sure.
just because you have a genetic code or you have a string of genetics in your family,
Yes.
that doesn't mean
Mhm.
that you're gonna have it. Not to mention, can I just mention one little thing here?
Oh boy.
So recently, recently I found out that my grandfather is not my genetic grandfather. Okay.
Oh.
So you're right. So all these years thinking that because there's a huge history of alcoholism in on his side of the family, all of his brothers and sisters. And so all these years I was thinking, oh man, like, man, what's gonna happen to me? What's gonna happen to my kids? Like, this is strong. He wasn't, but it was strong. And now, so all these years I was thinking genetically. So with this as my framework, if something would have happened to me, I would have been like, well,
Oh, it's
genetics.
genetics.
It's
Mm-hmm.
genetics. When I
Mhm.
didn't really
Genetics.
even know,
Yeah.
right? Like,
No.
sorry to
Yeah.
out my whole
Yeah.
family just now. Anyway.
So,
I
Dr.
was
Josh's
gaslit. This
brother
is gaslighting.
Yeah.
No.
Dr. Josh's brother reversed his schizophrenia. He was schizophrenic and homeless and like a drug addict, and he reversed it by going raw vegan. And I also know another person that did that too, Victoria. You can like look it up on YouTube. I used to be friends with her on Facebook. So yeah.
Yeah. It's the
I
power of food.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the power
And
of
lifestyle.
nutrition and lifestyle. Yep. What
Yeah.
goes in your mouth
Yeah.
matters more than you can put a dollar sign on. It really does.
Yeah.
Oh, what goes in your
And
mouth impacts your
Jenny
mood and your thinking, like it really
Sure.
does,
Jenny
Yeah.
Marie said they usually either use like they usually try keto first for schizophrenia in her practice, and then they'll try raw vegan if
Raw
that doesn't
vegan.
work.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
yeah.
I was at the IMMH this weekend,
Hmm.
which is the Integrative Medicine for Mental Health, and um, they talked a lot about different diets, right? They talked about keto,
Hmm.
uh, raw, raw vegan or whatever. What's the other one? Carnivore. They
Carnivore
talked
diet.
about a lot of things, yeah.
Yeah.
And they basically said that, and I don't know if this is true or not. I don't know what the research says. Like, if they're all similar in that you get rid of processed foods and gluten and things like
Right.
that in
Yeah.
all of them, and basically pick the one that you feel helps you the most.
Hmm.
That there isn't one magic bullet here, but there are some components of a magic bullet, like the processing and for some people dairy and eggs and gluten and sugar for sure,
Hmm.
Mhm.
alcohol and all those things. So yeah, so I think it's important to note that too. Like,
Yeah.
you might do really well on one diet whereas somebody else did very well on something else, or maybe you are a vegetarian that does really well with a little bit of fish sometimes,
Hmm.
Yeah.
so I think but that again goes back to that personal self-awareness that most people are lacking,
Mhm.
they're lacking
Yeah.
a lot.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So how do
sorry.
you incorporate this into your practice, Jenny? I'm kind of curious to know, and is that always received well?
I feel like it's kind of tough. And I think especially with like the amount that I've been kind of chastised for it among other therapists, like it feels like I'm
You're not
doing something
chastised here.
wrong.
We're the only ones
Yeah.
that count, just so you know.
Yeah, yeah, and you're
We have
okay,
a
you're
home with the
like,
Gaslit Truth.
geographically, Jenny, I don't know if you're comfortable with us sharing where you're actually located geographically?
I'm in Florida, but I used to
Okay,
be in California. So
okay, so I
yeah.
laugh when you say that because
Yeah.
we're way up north, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
we're almost in Upper land here, where we talk like this here up in this state, and we are very close-minded, and so when
Yeah.
you say that, I can't.
Floridians are too. I mean,
I
I
know.
spend a lot of time in
I
Florida,
do
and
know
they're
that.
not.
Well, when you're
Yeah.
going Florida, California, yeah, you're kind of two
Mm.
different sides of the world here.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna tell you that blows my mind too, because there are, I mean, I just feel like in the northern areas up here, we are extremely isolated from anything that is
Mm.
holistic, alternative, functional, whatever words you want to put on it, right? So you experience that where you're at.
But it's mostly online. So
Okay.
the people I went to a networking meeting in person recently, and it was crazy to me because everybody was open to like underlying causes and also to nutrition, and like multiple people were talking about it. And a lot of them had been to this Christian private university that's close by, called PBA, where they give you an assignment of either getting your neurotransmitters tested or doing a 10-page paper. And most of them got
I know
their
what I would do.
neurotransmitters tested.
Yes.
And so this therapist that I went to the
Love it.
meeting at, she has all the kids that she works with go get their neurotransmitters tested. And she had hers tested and started taking 5-HTP and eliminated gluten, and she's felt way better.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was really nice to see. But yeah, in my practice, I've mostly just talked about increasing like fruits and vegetables, and I have talked about like colorants and eating
Mhm.
whole foods,
Yeah.
and like trying to avoid processed foods and fast foods. But I feel like it's rare when a client actually takes that on. And yeah, I don't know if it's my approach or or what your experience
I
has
think
been, but
I think part of it is people come to a therapist expecting to talk.
yeah.
And talking through their problems. And I think that's what they expect from us.
Yep.
And so when you bring them something different, they don't know what to do with it. And often I
Mhm.
think people come in such a state of overwhelm or depression sometimes that making a change like this seems astronomical,
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
know in my therapy practice, like I will give very small changes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and see if they recognize a difference in that change and go
Mhm.
from there.
Yeah.
So it is really small building blocks. It is definitely not a fire hose approach. I will tell you,
Mhm.
when I come back from a conference or something, I feel like a fire hose. Like I want to come in and be like, you need to do all this stuff and this is what's going to help you, and blah blah
Yeah.
blah blah blah. And I've done that before in my practice when I was so impassioned by something, and it never works. Like
Oh.
often I would never see that person again. Like they're like, I am so out of here. This is not what I signed up for. But I think as you build a platform and as you see more people and you become more comfortable and confident, people begin to seek you out for that. Now,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
talked about this a little bit. They seek me out because I'm holistic, right? But they
Mhm.
don't really know what that means because I think it's kind of a trash word that means a
Yeah.
lot
Mhm.
of nothing.
Yeah.
So because technically every therapist is holistic, or
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they don't prescribe medication. I think that's what people equate holistic means, you don't prescribe or push medication. And I do think a lot of people don't want medication pushed on them,
Mhm.
but they also are not always open to making some of the changes that would be very beneficial to their brain health.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, except they know they don't want meds or more meds, right? More.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'm going to take a line out of Podcaster's Jen's book and be like, you just need to be empowered to just say what you know to your therapist,
Yeah.
because your work matters a lot. The
Mhm.
knowledge that you have is very important, because you also look at it I watch your stuff on social media. You look at it from mold and toxins and all of that. That's not something that I do so much.
Yeah.
So I mean, when you look at it environmentally, and I think it's because you have this lived experience in that space,
Mhm.
that you're
Yes.
like, this matters so much, and most
Yes.
people don't know that their environment, that is their environment, that
Yeah.
matters a lot
Yeah,
you
it's
know
missing.
mhm
Yeah, my partner worked at a mold toxicity and Lyme clinic, so those are both can be underlying causes of mental
mhm
health issues, depression, anxiety.
Mhm.
Um,
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
And
and
so
and a
those
lot
are
of us, even those of us that aren't in humid places like Florida, are exposed to mold. Like
oh
my
yeah,
family members in Idaho and
mold's
California had
everywhere.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
Mold is
everywhere.
all places.
yeah.
And I think about, so if you're listening to this, like, evaluate your workspace too. I've
Mhm.
worked with people, a couple different professions come in mind, and each of them had extreme anxiety. One worked at she was a swim instructor for decades, like I
Mhm.
think 20 years, swim instructor, in chlorine, smelling chlorine all day long, every day,
Mm.
and couldn't fathom the idea that maybe that was part of the issue.
Mhm.
Somebody else, that these are all years ago examples, was an instructor for hair school. So
Yeah,
hands in chemicals, smelling chemicals
constantly.
all day, every day. Another person, an embalmer,
Yeah.
would not wear any protective anything when they're doing it, and all
Wow.
day, every day, working in those chemicals. And surprise, they all had mental health problems.
Yeah.
You know,
I was on the swim team and was a lifeguard and swimming instructor at the YMCA, which is extremely chlorinated,
Mm-hmm.
right?
probably why you
And
have multiple chemical sensitivity now.
yeah, it could be
Mm-hmm.
part of it. And so I have recently started working with a practitioner that uses iodine, because that's supposed to be one of the things that helps
Mm-hmm.
with that, to help kind of
Yes.
detox some of the toxins like bromine and
Yeah, I've
something
been reading about that a little bit more. That intrigues me.
else.
Mhm.
That is interesting. That's
Yeah.
very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we only have a couple minutes left here, and
Mhm.
there is one little thing that I wanted to ask you about.
Mhm.
So you are a musician.
Mhm. Yeah.
Now I'm not gonna out her if she wants to. It's like an alter ego for her. So if she wants
Okay.
to say the name, she's welcome to, but I'm not going to.
Mm.
But I want to know the inspiration for you doing doing the music in the style that you do. I've said to her, you remind me of Blondie. Like Blondie meets The Cure is what I'm like,
Mm.
is where I go. Like Blondie meets The Cure. So I'd like to
Mm.
know like how that persona of you came out, and yeah, just kind of a brief story of where
Yeah.
that came from.
Yeah. Well, in high school, I listened to like alternative station music, like
Clearly.
like
Mhm.
Hole and stuff like that. And then I got into Riot Girl, which is like feminist punk music and culture as well. And so that really influenced me. And there's also electro clash music around that time, which is kind of
Mhm.
a mix of punk and new wave and like electronic music. And I was also introduced to experimental electronic music by some of the weird housemates I mentioned in Santa Cruz, and and then but yeah, really cool people and interesting music. And then later kind of got introduced to more of like I think at that time goth and dark wave music as well. And that influenced me. And so yeah, it's just kind of a combination of everything I've been exposed to.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
basically go on tour and you have this music career on the side that
Yeah.
I'm going to guess allows you to, have a lot of self-expression on the stage.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
yeah, so I'm like, she is a quintessential badass, is what she is. Just
Okay, it's called Violent Vicky.
oh, she said
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
Exactly.
There it is. And I literally, when I listen to your music, I have to tell you, there's something that is posted on your website, and it clicked for me
Hmm.
because it you have a review from Curve magazine that was put on your website, and it
Hmm.
says, a voice that is hauntingly evocative of Garbage's Shirley Mason.
Oh,
And
okay.
I literally, so Shirley Manson's voice is very, for me, for someone who loves music.
Yeah.
I went straight there when I listened to Serotonin,
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh my God,
Mm.
I can't wait to meet her. So thank you for
Awesome.
talking about this, because it fills a bucket for me, because I
Aw.
think the music that the words, the depth of the words within what you are singing about, there is so much reality for people in them that have been through some really painful shit in their lives when it comes to
Mhm.
mental health,
Yeah.
that they can connect with.
Yeah.
Really truly,
Yeah.
just by the words that are in there. And so I wanted to say that, because it's very neat.
Thank
You
you.
can sit in it, and it's a dark truth that feels really damn good. So
Thank you. I had somebody post an Instagram story that said like Violent Vicky is my therapist. And I was like,
Literally and figuratively. There you go.
yeah.
oh my gosh, that's a hook for you, lady.
That is yes,
Wow.
that is a marketing
I
strategy
think you should use
100%. Yeah. That's so great. Now, so just because we're talking about Violent Vicky, don't you have some new music that's coming out?
I do. It's actually a new version of Gaslight.
Yay!
Yeah, Gaslight originally came out in 2020, and it was kind of more of a guitar-ish song, but now it's going to be like a dance remix from this French producer, Echo Barrel, and it
Okay.
sounds really awesome. I'm really excited. It's coming out on the 25th, so it's
Cool.
just
So
in time for spooky season.
there you go. There you go. And
Okay.
I've
Yeah.
used the song Gaslight on TikTok,
TikTok.
actually.
Yep.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah. So thank you so much. All right. So I think we
Yeah.
need to wrap up this episode
Okay.
of the
We do.
Gaslit Truth. So let's not forget that Jennifer is also a super cool therapist whose partner is Dr. Josh Hellman, who's also been on the show too.
Yeah.
We love them both, and we also love Violent Vicky a lot. So thank you so much for sharing, all sides of you and your story with us.
Yeah.
It matters, and I hope that this conversation with 3 therapists can inspire more therapists to hop on board and not be afraid to talk about holistic ideas and
Mhm.
nutrition and real lifestyle factors that impact mental health. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. And everybody, don't forget to like, follow, share, subscribe. Send us your Gaslit Truth stories at the Gaslit Truth Podcast at gmail.com. We want 5 stars. If
Yeah,
there's
not
5
4.
stars available. Yeah. Jen said
It's 5.
4 before. I'm like, we want all
Yep.
5. So
No,
give
all
us
5.
5 stars.
Yeah.
And we will see everyone the next time on the Gaslit Truth Podcast.
All right. Bye.